All right, so this is a speaker meeting. Our speaker will share her experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. We out of respect for our speaker to please remain seated until she has finished. It is my pleasure to introduce Angie.
Okay. Love you too. Lots and lots. I'm just kidding. I'm getting excited for the fellowship season, though. Okay, I'm Angie. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Angie.
And before I begin, I'm just going to ask and invite this power that's greater than alcohol, greater than the voice inside of my head. I'm going to ask it to please speak through me tonight. I'm also going to ask to please help me set aside everything that I think I know about myself, the 12 steps, about God, and about anything really. Please free me of my opinions today so that I can help somebody in this room and to remain open and to remain teachable today. So, welcome to all the out-of-towners today. We had this really big event earlier today, this fellowship event, and when I speak after these fellowship events, I often am like, I don't know what else to say, because when you are in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous and you go to these AA fellowship events, it's like the program speaks for itself, and so often I'm thinking of I don't know if I have the words to really describe what we're doing here in this program, but I want to welcome all the newcomers here. In your first 30 days, you guys are the reason why I keep coming back, and so welcome. I hope that you guys find an effective sponsor and you guys find the fellowship that you've craved. I guess I'm going to start in April of 2019. I ended up in detox for the third time in very close succession of each other. When I was 28 years old, untreated alcoholism brought me right back to my parents' house, because when I'm in active alcoholism, I can no longer pay my rent, I can no longer take care of my responsibilities, and a good alcoholic makes them somebody else's problems. So I ended up at my parents' house at 28 years old, and what happened is I woke up sober and I had a baby, and I was incapable of taking care of myself and my child. And I was back at my parents' house and they were seeing what alcoholism was doing me, and I was incapable of experiencing that for myself because I was under the influence. I had stolen a check. The check was already cashed, and so what I did is I took that check and I put it in my bank account, and I double cashed this check so I could get a little bit more money in my pocket so I can get a little bit more loaded. And they got upset about it. And I just, in my head, I was like, that's the bank's problem, because I've learned systems, I'm going to put this double cash check in my account. I'm going to get the quick $200 because you never get the full amount when you do the mobile deposit thing. And it's going to give me the $200 that I needed, but then it's going to bounce and I'm going to owe the bank, and it's not going to charge the person who the check belonged to. So what's the problem, But they sat me down because they noticed that check was missing. And my mom looked at me and I just saw the anger in her eyes. And she goes, I can't cuss around my kid anymore. Oh my God, I was on the phone with my sponsor last week and I said the F word. And she went to school and started saying the F word. And so now I just my mom didn't care if I got sober, but she said, you're not going to be a mother. And so I didn't know where else to go, so I went to detox again. And I'd been to detox twice in very close succession of each other. And this indescribable thing happened. Now, I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'd gone to the Dewey Center dozens of times. And whenever I went there, they gave me a ton of medication, Suboxone, Ambien, Xanax, all the good stuff, you don't even really detox when you go there because they give you all the good stuff to make you keep feeling good. And when I got there, my insurance covered 3 days there. They didn't give me anything. No Suboxone, no sleeping pills, nothing. And I sat in that bed, detoxing cold turkey off of heroin and Xanax, and I cried my freaking eyes out the entire time that I was there, you know? I had no money for sober living. My insurance doesn't pay for addiction and alcohol treatment. I had absolutely nothing. And when I was there at this detox previously, they had told me, Angie, you've been here 12 times. I don't know that we can help you anymore. And when I got to this one, I was on 15. And I sat in that bed, in that detox room, and I'm slaying in my own sweat. I can't get out of bed to shower. And I remember going to detox before, and there was always a little bit of fight left in me. You know, like you would get sober, but like I had a little bit more will left inside of me to like arrange life to suit myself. And some of you guys are like know what I'm talking about when I say that, and some of you guys are probably like, what are you talking about? But what I mean is like I was never willing to give up everything to find sanity in this program. And like some of you guys come to Alcoholics Anonymous and you're like, yeah, I'm just here so I can stay sober. Well, you're all sober, so why are you still here? Why do we stay in Alcoholics Anonymous? If we're all sober and that's the end game. But in step 2, it says, I'll be restored to sanity. The worst thing for somebody like me is to take drugs and alcohol out of my body and to leave me with the insanity that's happening inside of my head. And I sat in that detox bed and there's tears streaming down my face and I have no fight left inside of me. And I would have rather stuck a bullet in my head than to live one more day without a substance in my body. And I cried in that bed, and I had experience. I had been sober in this program almost 4 years, and I sat in Prescott meetings, and I went to all the conferences, and I was, sponsoring women, and, it was an amazing time in AA. And I had experience, and I didn't know anything about staying sober when I got back in 2019. Absolutely nothing. And I remember the tears streaming down my face, and for the first time in my life, I said, God, what's your plan for me? And I had never asked for his plan for me. It was always, God, I need that college education, and I need the career, and I need tall, dark, and handsome, and I need $50,000 a year salary to be okay, and a condo with 2 bedrooms and some comforting thing, whatever. It was always, I had terms on what God was going to provide for me. And when I ended up at this detox, alcohol had surrendered me. My first step was entirely between me and the substances. It's not something my sponsor could have explained to me, although when I sat with a sponsor and they took me through this little Bible blue book thing, the Instruction for Sanity book, I got some really, really great information about what I was experiencing. And then somebody started to put words to something that I had been going through for a very long time, and I've never felt home anywhere like I felt in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I was in this detox a couple days in. They're not giving me anything. Like when you go to the doctor and you need pain pills, and so you're like, oh my God, my leg hurts, and you're waddling in from there's no pain, right? But you're 50 feet in the parking lot, and you're limping into the emergency room, putting on a show for the doctor, I gotta get this prescription for Vicodin, I was always playing these characters because I was playing the system, And this is what started happening. It's I used to go doctor shopping until the prescriptions started, the pharmacies started converting the systems or something. And so if you went to one doctor and another doctor in 2 different pharmacies, you couldn't do that stuff anymore. In 2011 or 12, they combined it all so they could see what doctors were. And then I got red flagged and they stopped giving me all those pain pills and stuff. But what happened is I started going to the doctor and I'd be like, I'm shaking, I need more Xanax, I'm withdrawing from Xanax, and they'd be like, listen, you got your prescription filled on the 3rd, and it's the 5th, And it's and then all of a sudden that little act, oh, I need it so bad, and my face goes cold and I'm like, I'm done here. Is there anything else? I'm leaving. I'm out because I got to go find it somewhere else. Not going to give it to me? On to the next, you know? And like those characters I used to play like started to dissipate. They started to diminish. I was like surrendering to these characters I played to continue to put substances in my body. And I was being surrendered by something I didn't believe in yet. And so I'm sitting in this detox, and I'm like, there's the fight in my head, right? There's this fight going on, like, gotta get back home to the baby, you know? I would hate for people to think that there's something wrong with me, so I gotta go home and be a mother. It'd be way too embarrassing for me to, like, not go back to my kid. And I get a call from this woman at Nova, and I'd been there once before. It's Nova up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. It's an amazing 30-day program, and this woman named Linda, I used to work at Nova, and she calls me from the detox, and I have no idea who's on the other line of the phone because I can't remember anything when I'm newly sober. And she goes, Angie, it's Linda from Nova, and I just want you to know that if you need to come back to Nova, we have a bed for you, so will you come? And I said yes when self wanted to say no. I left that program after 3 days, and I drove up to my parents at 30 years old. They drove me back up to this 30-day program, and my baby's sleeping in the car, and I have this attachment issue. Like, I can't leave my kid. There's no way I can leave my kid for 30 days. And and I think that I'm a great mother. My daughter needs me. She's not going to be okay. But my daughter needed to be anywhere but with me, you know. I was driving that little girl off to drug dealers' houses. The drug dealers were like, why are you leaving her in the car? Why would I bring her in the drug dealer's house, you know? But like, I was putting her in extremely unsafe situations because she came second to my addictions. And I got up to Nova, and I'm getting out of the car, and my parents are in the front seat, and I'm crying the whole way up there, and I just keep saying, like, I don't know why I did this again. I have not a clue how I got back here again. I'd been sober before. I had tasted the juice that you guys had, and like I had experienced the juice that I had seen in these rooms, and I was back at square one, and I was defeated, completely defeated from alcoholism. And I remember Linda walking outside from Nova, and I got out of the car, and my knees were shaking, and I dropped to my knees, and I begged her. I said, please fucking help me. I can't do this anymore. And I got to that 30-day program, and I left with a rehab boyfriend. You know? All the desperation in the world, you know? You know, because my problem is really this deep-seated self-centeredness, you know? And like, if I'm as obsessed with me and I find a guy that's obsessed with me too, that's a match made in heaven, you know? 100%, you know? So, and he had a wife, you know, outside issue. So anyways, some amazing things started to happen at that 30-day program, and one was I was starting to be honest with another human being. I was finding it incapable to tell lies. And so I leave and I go back to my parents' house because I had no money for sober living, nothing. And the guy that I was, my rehab romance, who had the wife, he followed me. We went to a sober living right down the block from my parents' house. And this is what happened. Because my other addiction is finding another hostage in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and taking you on a ride with me, you know? And what happened is, like, I went to a couple meetings with that guy. He was right down the street from my house, and I was so suicidal when I got home that I was incapable of continuing that relationship with him. Something had started to surrender me, and I had no idea what was happening to me. And I started to feel sick to my stomach at the idea of, like, taking this guy with me down this torturous hole. And I remember like sitting at my parents' house, and like he would not stop texting me, and I just wanted to put a bullet in my head. Like I just couldn't do it anymore, so I ghosted him. That's a spiritual thing to do. Cut him off, never speak to him again. And there's another part of this story that's actually really cool about when I became amended, and then that's a whole nother story, so maybe I'll get to that later. But what happened to me is I had a car. That's all that I had, with a broken head gasket. And so I ended up back at my parents' house after 30 days of sobriety. And I got immersed into the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I found this old-timer sponsor. I got plugged into these old-timer meetings in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And I was driving this car with a busted head gasket to all these meetings, like 30, maybe 35 days sober, something like that. Oh, actually, no, I changed my sobriety date because I always brought pills into detoxes and residentials. And so there was like, my sobriety date was never like really an actual sober date. And this sobriety date is actually like halfway through that 30-day program. And so I go to these, I'm heading to these meetings, and like I'm waking up every morning and I just want to commit suicide, and I'm not telling anybody that. And so what happens is like I'm driving my car like 30 minutes to the really good AA meetings, and my head gasket's like putting out and my car's stalling out on the freeway, and I'm just like, come on, I gotta get to this meeting, because after these meetings I'm going home and I'm feeling a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of relief after I get home from these meetings. And so then the head gasket blows out. I sell the car for like $200 to some, random place. And what happens is something really wonderful happens. People in Alcoholics Anonymous drove 35 minutes to come pick me up to make sure that I got to those meetings. And after the meetings, they would take me and they would buy me food and they would fellowship with me. And a girl that I used to sponsor started picking me up to take me and go do big book studies with her sponsees. And I'm sitting there like, I've got 30 days sober. Like, why am I sitting in this big book study with this girl? Like, I've got absolutely nothing to say here. All I can think about is like fantasizing about when fucking God's gonna kill me. And I'm suffering alcoholism, right? And so I'm going to these meetings, and it's like, nobody asked me for money. They weren't like, hey, we need gas money. Nothing like that. They would get off of their 9-to-5 job, come pick me up, and I feel worthless, absolutely worthless. And they're driving me to these meetings, and I'm going to all these fellowship events and all this stuff, and I'm starting to feel just for 5-10 minutes, I would feel a little bit better. So that would motivate me to do it the next day, right? And so then what happens is like I'm getting 30 days, and then I got 60 days, and then my sponsor is getting new sponsees, and she's got 4 days sober, but she has a car. So then she's getting sent to my house, and now I have to tell her how I got 60 days. And that's how this whole AA thing works. This whole service thing works, this fellowship thing works. And then, I just kept suffering. I was meeting with my sponsor, and she's a great sponsor. She had a lot of time in this program. She was really plugged in, but I was looking to go through the steps and actually experience the steps that I had once experienced before. So I made a phone call, because what happened is I was about 3 months sober, and I tore my dad's basement apart, and he is a Milwaukee police officer. And he always had a gun in the safe in the basement. So I tore the basement apart, and I'm taking this safe and I'm smashing it on the concrete on the ground, and I'm just in my head, all I can think about is, my daughter's going to grow up with 2 parents that are addicted. She's going to suffer for the rest of her life. So the only solution here, the absolute only solution, is I'm going to put a bullet in her head and a bullet in mine, and that's it. And I couldn't get the safe open, and I was so defeated, chucking the safe against the concrete floor, that I fell to my knees, and for the first time I heard a voice inside of my head that was not my alcoholism, and it said, keep going. And I cried my eyes out on the floor, and the next day I made a phone call because I was getting really irritable with my daughter. And I was 3 months sober, and I make a phone call to this guy, and he shared this story at a meeting 7 years ago, and it's kind of wild because they're both in the room today. But he said, he shared this at a meeting, and I'm going to paraphrase it. It's he screamed at his daughter, and his alcoholism said, I can't be a parent, and he was going to exit. And it was a spiritual discipline, and it was amended that he showed up to his relationship with his daughter. And for whatever reason, 7 years later, out of everything this guy says, that's the only thing that I remember. So I pick up the phone and I call my now sponsor, Rick. And I tell Rick, I'm like, I'm having trouble parenting. I remember this story that you shared. Can you help me? I need help as a parent. And he goes, what you need is to treat your alcoholism. What? This has nothing to do with alcoholism. Excuse me. Rick started sponsoring me on the phone. I called him every single day, and I was confused. I was very confused every time I called him. And he started bringing me through the instructions of the book, and he kept saying, when you're ready, when you're ready. And then he would say things like, I am not your therapist. Go on Google, type in therapy, go talk to somebody else. If you call me, we're gonna take the instructions in this book. I'd never had a sponsor that had a specific way of sponsoring before. I thought you just called a sponsor and bitched about all the people that were pissing you off and eventually get to a 4-step inventory. So it was I had to relearn. I actually don't even ever think that I learned how to be sponsorable before. But I had to learn. And so I would show up and it would be classes in session today, And so Rick took me through the steps, and one day I called him and I said, what do you mean when you're ready? He goes, when you're ready, we're going to do the inventory. And I said, okay, what do I need to do the inventory? And so then I'm writing out these resentments, and I'm following the format, and I go to do this 4-step inventory, and it's a cold, rainy day, and I remember I was like, this is not the day. I'm just not in the mood to do this 4-step inventory, and it's gray in Wisconsin, and I pull over and I'm in some parking lot in Hales Corners, Wisconsin, and I call Rick. We need 2 hours on the phone to do this inventory, and one of my resentments was a resentment to God. And so I had some resentments towards God, because if God was real, one, why did I get molested? Why did I get raped? Why was I a freaking alcoholic? Why was I treating my daughter the way that I was treated? If there was a God, why do I suffer the way that I'm suffering? And I was really upset about it. And so we go through this 4-step inventory, and it's kind of sharing 5th-step stuff, the exorcism. The only thing I know how to describe what happens in AA is sponsors are like spiritual surgeons, right? They're the doctor, and I'm the patient. The problem is that I have always lived life thinking that I'm the doctor. And if my sponsor gives me a suggestion, right, I think I have a better idea. So I'm going to take the tools away from the doctor and say, no, doc, I got it myself. And I remember Rick telling me this one time. He was like, if you're 30 years old and you go to a doctor and they say you have stage 4 cancer, you're going to die if you don't do this chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is going to be painful. It's rigorous. You have to show up to it. But if the chemo works, you're going to get the rest of your life back. What would someone at 30 years old say? I'm going to do the chemo. Yes, bring it on. Come on. But when you go and you're an alcoholic and you go to a doctor and they say, okay, you have stage 4 alcoholism. The only solution is this 12-step program. It's going to be kind of painful, but you're going to get the rest of your life back. Us alcoholics go, I have to think about it. It's the craziest things. And there was a woman that saved my life in 2013. Her name is Kelsey Hyde. She was a phenomenal sponsor. She carried a message of depth and weight. She had a master's degree in addiction, and she died of untreated alcoholism. And I went to her funeral in May. That woman saved my life and hundreds of other women's lives. And the program that's outlined in this book is outlined in a chapter called Into Action. And so we go through this 4-step inventory, and I'm mad at God, and I'm spewing crap out of my mouth about God because I'm fucking pissed. And my sponsor says one thing, and I'm not going to say it here, but my sponsor says one thing, and I have a sudden and profound realization that has changed me since the day that this has happened. I have not been the same. And I have this sudden and profound realization about the God that I thought I understood. And I remember I got out of the car, and my sponsor hangs up the phone and says, call me back in 5. And I get out of the car and I'm walking around, and I saw a tree for the very first time. I had spent, you guys have Instagram and stuff? You know about filters? Filters on pictures and stuff like that? I had been looking at life through the lens of these filters, right? And so the only thing that I could see in life was this thing called alcoholism, self. And it's like you watch a football game or whatever. Some of you guys watch basketball and stuff like that. And then they have the sportscaster person, the person narrating what you're watching, essentially. So you're like watching the basketball or the football go back and forth, and 54 tackles 32, and then there's this guy in the background like, and he's got the ball and he's running to the get a touchdown. Oh yes, he's got a touchdown. And that thing has been in my head since I was like 4 years old. That thing in my head is that narrator, that alcoholism has been narrating life incorrectly since I was like really young, you know? And I realized that like when I had the thought that I should kill my daughter and kill myself, I realized that drugs and alcohol were not the problem. It was a prescription that I used to treat what my real problem was. And I used drugs and alcohol to drown out this voice of my alcoholism inside of my head that has always been managing me. And what I had failed to do when I was sober last time was have the willingness to be managed by something other than the voice inside my head. And like some of you guys hear it, and it's like I wake up in the morning and like the voice of my alcoholism, it's like, gotta go to work today, and the voice is like, do you really need this job? Do you really need this paycheck? And I'm like, I don't know, I don't feel like going to work today, you know? And like that's the voice. It's like, you know, it doesn't tell me to go like, you know, it's like my sponsor said earlier today, like I was holding this little baby and my sponsor goes, you were all like that. Would I like want to stick a needle of heroin in my 3-year-old daughter's arm? Probably not, but like I do that to myself. I reward my body with poison to treat a voice inside of my head. And I remember like going to this doctor, and it's like, you know, I was throwing up all this white stuff because like I left AA in 2017 thinking that I could drink normally because my primary problem was heroin. And I came crawling back to AA in 2019 with a full knowledge of my condition regarding alcohol. And it's like, you can't get this information from anywhere else. In the doctor's opinion, the doctor goes, you know, us doctors, like, we have to know our own inadequacy in treating you guys because the only thing that works for an alcoholic of your type is a spiritual experience. And then in the back of the appendix, it's like, what is a spiritual experience? It's an entire personality change. Well, how do I have an entire personality change? So I open up books and I'm like, I'm going to study this. How do I change my personality? Oh, got some good information. Thanks, guys. I'll be back later. I'll let you know how it goes. And then we come back even more broken from drinking than before, managing our own life. And like this whole program, I mean, the instructions in the book, like Bill Wilson had the exact same experience that I had in the detox in whatever year that was. And it had been written in this book since 1939. And I think I'm different than them. I think this program's not going to work for me. And I have literally, his story was written how many years ago? And I'm experiencing it in 2019. I was always like, I'm going to rewrite the big book. I'm going to rewrite it. There's some things that need to change in it. Until alcohol beats you into the ground and you and you realize that the solution is outside. It's outside of what's going on up here. And the other crazy thing, I know sometimes I bounce around, but like Bill Wilson's sobriety date is December of 1934. The founding day of Alcoholics Anonymous is, I think it's in June of 1935. Now, if you do the math, Bill Wilson had 5 months of sobriety when a program was created where millions of people now gather. Do not tell me that you need 20 years of sobriety to change the fucking world. There are millions of people having these crazy spiritual awakenings in this programming that are changing them for the rest of their life. And this dude had 5 months of sobriety when this got founded. It's contingent on the work that we do in this program and our willingness, it says honest, open, and willing, right? And our willingness to give up our ideas of our own life. And like, if you're like me who suffers from a defiance, be like out of this world. It was like I went to college and I would be like, okay, God, I'm just going to go to college and like, then I'll quit drinking. And I would go there and I would be on all these drugs and drinking like crazy. And I would show up for like 2 weeks to class and I would be like, college, manage my alcoholism so that I stop drinking the way that I'm drinking. And I would show up there and like 2 weeks into class, it's like, okay, we need you to show up on class on time. We need you to do this homework. We need you to take these tests and do all these things. And I get there and I'm desperate and I'm willing and I'm going to do it. And then 2 weeks in, I'm like, don't manage me like that. That's what my alcoholism does. It's defiant. It doesn't like authority. We have authority issues. Carl Jung, who's like a really good founder of, or not founder, he had a really great influence. He's I think a psychologist, but he had a really great influence about the spiritual aspect in Alcoholics Anonymous. And he talks about alcoholism being a need of seeking. He refers to it, and I don't have the article in front of me, so you'll have to look it up yourself to get like what he actually writes. But it's like, our thirst for alcoholism is actually a deep-seated seeker inside of us. And in the big book, you go back, it says we have these 3 pertinent ideas. A, I was alcoholic and could not manage my own life. Gonna prove you wrong now. I'm gonna go get this job and tall, dark, and handsome and all this money, and I'll prove to you guys I can't manage my life. And then B, no human power could have relieved our alcoholisms. And if you're like me, I went to psychiatrist after psychiatrist after psychiatrist, and I got put on bags of medication, and I was bipolar disorder, and I had insomnia and social phobia and opiate and alcohol and all these different psychiatric diagnoses. Do you know I went through the 12 steps and I take no medications now, and I have absolutely nothing wrong with me? I don't have mental illness. I suffer from alcoholism that requires spiritual maintenance every single day. And then does it get a little crazy up here from time to time? Yes, but I know where I need to go to get that treated. And like the doctors, they say this in the doctor's opinion, we're sorry, but we can't help you. We're going to stand with you. We're going to help you out when you get to the hospital. We'll give you some meds to get you started. But after that, you're fucked. That's not what he says. But if you read it, he says, the only thing that works for people like you is an entire psychic change. It's not some witchcraft stuff. Like, it's like, literally, it's like my morals coming into moral psychology. My morals coming into Alcoholics Anonymous was like, I would tell you I was sorry for lying to you long enough to shut you up to keep stealing from you. That was my morals. And it says that as a result of this program, we're going to have an entire moral psychology, a psychic change. That means I'm going to be honest, and it's non-negotiable with the voice inside my head. That means when I go to the self-checkout at Fry's, I'm not taking 2 items and only scanning 1. And some of you guys are thinking, like, what does that have to do with alcoholism? Well, let me tell you, 4 years sober, I'm running a treatment center in Prescott, Arizona. It was a well-known treatment center. We had a lot of clients there. I thought I was the queen of Alcoholics Anonymous. At least that's what my ego told me. I was very important in this town. And I had tall, dark, and handsome. I had a career. I had, all the money, the condo, all those things that normal people have. All the things that normal people have. And I was still lying, cheating, stealing, avoiding, and blaming. Those are the 5 things that my alcoholism does in sobriety. Lies, cheats, steals, avoids, blames. And if I continue on with that type of personality, I eventually drown it out with alcohol and other substances. And so I get into the program this time, and I'm a couple months sober, and I'm leaving Fry's because I've got this entitled single mother attitude. And I'm newly sober, and I steal the chicken from the Fry's, and I get to my car, and I was like, I just couldn't live like it. I couldn't do the hostage taking thing. I couldn't steal from the grocery store anymore. I was going to work and I couldn't call my boss and lie about why I couldn't come in today. And I started to get surrendered by this power greater than the voice inside of my head. called my sponsor, and all he does is, he didn't yell at me, nothing, just said, well, when that happened to me, this is what I did. You can try it on for yourself, or let me know what happens. Oh, God. Let me know what happens. Well, I had the experience before. I embezzled money from the treatment center, and in the big book it says something like, we don't buy our own peace of mind at the expense of others. And I went and I actually thought that I was making an amends to this guy, and I was actually doing a fifth step because I was scared to death that he was going to find out that I was taking money from this company. So I went to him and I said, hey, I've been stealing from you. I'm so sorry. I was shaking profusely having this conversation with him. He said, I'm going to pay you the money back. I don't have it right now, but I'll make the payments. I was not ready to actually amend that because I was not done stealing. And when I got to my 9th step in this program, because the 4th step is outlined in a chapter called How It Works. It's not the program. How it works is how the program works. The actual program is what we do after we have this profound perception change as a result of the 4th step, and then what we put into action after that is called amended behavior. That means all the harm that I caused to all the people, now I have an obligation to show up and clean up my past, and if I don't, I know that I'm going to drink again. Why? Because I've been in this program sober and I drank again. For 2 reasons. 1, I wasn't amended, and 2, untreated Al-Anon. And like, I have an Al-Anon sponsor now, and like, I thought that if I couldn't manage my life in my sobriety, I was sure the fuck gonna manage yours. And so I got into a relationship with a guy who ended up getting untreated, and then I thought that I could manage his sobriety. And as a result of that, I lost my job sober, you know, like I had all these consequences, and that's like a whole nother story, but it's like untreated Al-Anon and untreated alcoholism is the exact same thing. It's how I try to manage life, and if I can't manage my life, I'm gonna go manage your life, and I'm gonna go manage my boss's life. Some of you guys get jobs here, and you're like, I wasn't employable. What I do is I shut down the whole company because I have a very nasty way of talking to my boss, you know? But like, I would go get these jobs and I'd be like, I sell myself at the interview. This is all the wonderful things I could do for your company. If you don't know about me, then you should know about me, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you know, we just need you to stock the shelves at the gas station. Let me just sell myself so I can make, but then, you know, I get the job and like 2 weeks later, this voice inside my head doesn't feel like it anymore. And so then I start showing up late to work, and I'm being really lazy with my duties at work, and I'm taking money out of the cash register and all of this stuff. Like, I had to actually practice being employable in this program. I had not put, and like, this is my story, is like, I get fired from every job I worked at, 25 jobs, under the influence and sober. I was a year sober in this program, and I got fired by my best friend because I was untreated in this program. If my problem had anything to do with drugs and alcohol, why do I have all these consequences sober? You want to know what's even nastier is when you look at your 8th step and it's like, you did all this stuff sober. It's like, okay, this is the truth. It's like, people don't really care that much that you're doing drugs and alcohol. It's all the extra behaviors in addition to that. It's like, there's plenty of people that smoke weed and do cocaine sometimes, and like, it doesn't affect other people. Like, it's like, that's their own thing or whatever. And then like us alcoholics, like, you know, we do drugs and alcohol, and like, our life is your freaking problem now. It's like, you need to pay my bills, you need to do this, and like, Mom, I really need $50 for gas. Angie, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I know, but like that Motel 6, just Motel 6. And I thought you needed it for gas. Mom, I need you to Venmo me right now. I have a check. I'll give it to you tomorrow. I promise. It's like, my life and my addiction was everyone else's responsibility. I was 28 years old and I knew nothing about my family. Absolutely nothing. Why? Because I'm fucking selfish. And my problem is that I am all that I think about. And when I had this experience with this 4-step inventory, it says in the 4-step, it says, we turn back to the list for it held the key to our freedom. And when you turn back to the resentments, you look at all your amends. And you realize that the things that you hate about other people is the things that you have to make right in this world. And if you don't, and you have alcoholism like I do, you'll drink again. I thought that I could manage alcohol because I had what normal people had in their life. I got the job and the career and all that stuff. But what I failed to remember at almost 4 years sober was that when I this is what my first night with alcohol looked like. I went and picked up a bottle of wine because I never had an issue with wine. And I went to the gas station and I picked up a bottle of Moscato and I brought it home and I dug the cork out of this bottle with a switchblade. And I sat in the bathroom like a normal drinker. I sat on the floor in the bathroom and I sucked that bottle of wine down in like 60 seconds. And what I experienced after those 60 seconds was this sensation in my gut that was so warm and fuzzy, like the Christmas tree when you turn the lights on in the Christmas tree. That's what happens to my insides when you put alcohol in it. And like I could will my way through a lot of things. If I didn't have enough money and I needed to pay rent, I could go will my way into some side work or go pick up an extra job and like will my income. I could not will myself away from stopping drinking after 2 years. You know, and I left AA in 2017 thinking with the delusion that I could drink like a normal person now because I had acquired what normal people do. And I came crawling back to Alcoholics Anonymous like, why can't I stop drinking? And the doctor's like, you know, you're throwing up bile because your body can't metabolize alcohol anymore. And so my body's rejecting what my mind is obsessed with, you know? And what I was experiencing was a phenomenon of craving. I've had it with certain substances. I've had it with alcohol. Like I have no delusion today that when I put a drink inside of my body that my body experiences a phenomenon of craving. That's the difference between me and somebody that drinks normally or maybe somebody that has a problem with alcohol. There was no willpower to will drinking out of my life. I remember staring at the clock and I'd be like, all right, I woke up today and I just have, if I get through 3 hours, then I have 3 more sets of 3 hours and like, and I would, but like I was like a zombie. I was like a shell of a human being, and I would stare at the clock, and if I just get through 24, then I could get through 48, and then by 11 a.m. I'm out the freaking door because now I have a plan to go get alcohol because I can't live without it. Why would I? Alcohol did the greatest thing that I ever needed. It made me fearless. I didn't feel self anymore inside of my head. Why would I go to a 12-step program and do this God thing with you? Why? And it's wonderful because in Bill's story, it outlines it perfectly. He had a resentment to Ebby Thatcher, and Ebby was shoving God down Bill Wilson's throat, and Bill was like, that's what Bill did. And that's what most of us do. And then there's this chapter called We Agnostics where it says the 12-step program is custom made for people that can't believe in God or don't believe in God. Welcome. And I hope that some of you guys find a sponsor who has their own inventory with this resentment to God and they can bring you through it. And I hope that you guys can find the spiritual awakening because what I started to notice is the eyes of people that have experienced it in the rooms. And there was this aura to people. They were like peaceful. I was not peaceful for many, many years. I was manic depressive, 100% looked like I had bipolar disorder. I was on top of the world, I was going to change the world, and then I was so depressed, I think someone needs to take care of me, and I was just like up and down and up and down and crazy. I took people hostage, my family, my relationships. I learned that I play roles in this program. In step 3, it says the roles in which we play God. Mine are the princess bitch whore. You guys are like, what? So what? It's like being in a character of a movie, if you really think about it. Some of you guys have these really trippy spiritual experiences, but you don't have the words to describe it, but it's like we're all like these characters in a movie, right? We're all got this meat suit living on a fucking rock that spins around in the middle of the universe, and you guys think you're so special. you know. But this little meat suit I got here plays a couple different roles, and like one of them is the princess, and she's the victim, and she's like, somebody take care of me, come get me. And then there's the bitch, like, I don't fucking need your help, get the fuck away from me. And then there's the whore, I'm gonna seduce you to get what I want. There's this really awesome video, it's a Terry Gorski video, Intimacy in Recovery, or Intimacy in Relationships. Don't watch it unless you're ready. I would suggest a sex inventory before you watch the video. But I took notes on it. I've got 2 pages of notes because I didn't know what it was like to be in a healthy relationship with someone, because my relationships were 100% based in self-centeredness. What you could do for me, and I wanted to find my soulmate. It was the greatest lie I ever lived in. My soulmate, it was looking for a soulmate is another form of an addiction, you know? And so that's another story. I'm not going to get into that because I have to close. So the program is about becoming amended. It's about experiencing a personality change through this supernatural thing that we cannot explain to each other, but it's guaranteed to happen if we take the instructions in this book with someone who's qualified to do it. Now, look for a sponsor. They're like surgeons, right? Spiritual surgeons. Look for a sponsor that has that look in their eye, that sense of peace, that sense of comfort, who also had alcoholism like you. And let them guide you through this program. And if you're not ready for this program and you're not done managing your life, I suggest you keep managing it until you're ready to do the program, because I couldn't do half in and half out, but that's just my experience. And so what happened is the 10-step promises happened to me, and so I'm going to read them to you guys. If I can find the purge. Oh, the other thing, I have some of this stuff memorized, and I just want you guys to know, having it memorized and coming to meetings, because this is also my experience, having it memorized and coming to meetings and spewing it off at the mouth doesn't mean anything if you're not practicing this stuff in all your affairs. That means I'm taking these spiritual tools to work in the bedroom. That's a weird one. I'll explain that later if you guys want to know. You're taking them with your family, you're taking them with your child, and you're practicing what you learn here in every single relationship that you have. That means that I am the same authentic person in every relationship that I have. And I could have this memorized and I could still not practice it, you know, because it says we pause when agitated or doubtful. That means when I'm at work and I'm agitated, I'm pausing. That's a really tough spiritual discipline for us, but I'm just saying, I have this stuff memorized. It doesn't mean that I practice it every day, but progress, not perfection. So it's easy to rest up on this. It's easy to let up on this. Let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, aka get lazy. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. That means I have to seek every single day. Every day is a day that we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. And then this is the 10-step promises, which comes right before this, right? Because I'll have these wonderful spiritual epiphanies, and then what I love about old timers is that they keep doing what they did in the beginning, and it keeps working for them. But I have these wonderful spiritual epiphanies, and then I'm like, I'm good, I'm cured, I won't do it. And then you have to start over again. And so that's like, you have to do this every single day. I wake up with a head full of me, and I have to ask and invite a power greater than that voice to manage me today. And so these are the promises that if I work this spiritual program, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, even the voice inside of our head. For by this time, sanity should have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor and the voice inside of our head. If tempted, we'll recoil from it like a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected, safe from the voice inside my head, safe from alcohol, safe from drugs. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is the experience. That is how we react so long as we remain in fit spiritual condition. Thank you so much for my life today.